Terrorist financing. Terrorist financing refers to the processing of funds to sponsor or facilitate terrorist activity. For terror groups, funding is lifeblood, no matter how small it may be. The biggest vulnerabilities are finance and communications. From point of origin to point of expense, there are vulnerabilities at each step. Terror groups would require secrecy. Terror groups would disguise or commingle transactions, and they will always look out for soft targets. For example, institutions or sectors with weak compliance regimes. Terror groups would opt for activities that create maximum impact with minimal inputs. And terror groups would like to use facilities which are quick and leave no or minimal paper trails. Stages similar in terrorist funding as in anti-money laundering. Money laundering and terror financing. Predicate offense, raise. Money laundering is a predicate offense. Similarly, under terrorist funding, to raise funds is a predicate offense. Placement, store. Placement or raising and storing of funds in various institutions or negotiable instruments to avoid any detection. Layering, move. Layering funds to avoid any audit trails and frequently moving the funds from one institution or asset class to avoid any audit trails. Integration, use. Integrating funds into the formal financial system so it looks as to be genuine and makes the identification of the true source almost impossible. Similarly, use of funds for terror groups for the intended acts of terror. Terror financing. Straight path to terror action, driven by ideology. Early deterrence, detection, and disruption is the only right way forward. Possible funding flows and requirements of terror groups. Understanding funding requirements of terror groups. Organizational level. Large funding flows for arms and ammunition acquisition and communication devices. Facilitation level. Moderate funding flow for logistics, shipment, and expenses for terror groups or their members. And individual level. Lesser funding flows for day-to-day living expenses, travel, and more. Opportunism of terrorists to exploit systemic vulnerabilities, and adaptability of terrorists to circumvent controls. 3 levels of funding flows terrorist funding organizations might use depending on the target points. From point of origin to organizations, as it starts from hundreds of thousands of dollars going upwards. For example, large funds might get transferred through banks or other financial institutions for procuring arms and ammunitions or weapons, etc. From organization to operations in the range of tens of thousands of dollars and upwards. For example, mid-scale funding might be used for the purpose of conducting operations like logistics, transportations, or other related expenses for the group members. To individuals, cells, or groups, this could be just a few hundred to a few $1,000s. For example, small-scale fundings for supporting the individual or small groups with logistics, travel, or lodging expenses. What are foreign terrorist fighters? All 193 member countries of the United Nations Security Council adopted under Chapter 7 the Resolution 2178, which defines foreign terrorist fighters as individuals who travel to a state other than their state of residence or nationality for the purpose of the perpetration, planning, or preparation of, or participation in terrorist acts or the providing or receiving of terrorist training, including in connection with armed conflict. Criminal groups can infiltrate financial institutions to provide funding support to FTFs. Identification of key differences between money laundering and terrorist financing.